available. For more information, visit dryhousenow.com. That's dryhousenow.com. Or call 888-979-WAVE. That's 888-979-WAVE.
Wave Home Solutions for a healthy, comfortable home.
Broadcasting live from the Dollar Loan Center, Don'tBeBroke.com studios. KXST AM, North Las Vegas. KXTE HD3 Pahrump, Las Vegas. CBS Sports Radio, 1140, a radio.com station. The most in-depth coverage of the Silver and Black as they set their sights on Las Vegas for 2020. Live from the CBS Sports Radio 1140 studios, it's Silver and Black today. Join the conversation by calling 702-889-5978. Now, here's Scott Gulbranson and Matt Gutierrez.
Good morning, Las Vegas. Welcome to Week 11 of the 2018 Oakland Raiders season. A season of upheaval and change. A season of resets and goodbyes. A season that separates real members of Raider Nation from those who jump ship when the going gets tough. Welcome back to Las Vegas's only All Raiders talk show. Coming to you live from the Dollar Loan Center, Don'tBeBroke.com studios. This, of course, is the Silver and Black today, getting you ready for the Raiders at the Arizona Cardinals later today. Kickoff down in the Valley of the Sun in Glendale, Arizona. Could this be the game the weary, loss-heavy Raiders can win? Could Derek Carr and his patchwork offensive line put together a complete game today? We're going to talk about it and get your opinions, Las Vegas and the world. Now, I am Scott Gulbranson. Matt Gutierrez is still on vacation. I am your host. I am joined by my special co-host today, Mr. Chaz Osborne. Chaz is a former longtime Los Angeles Lakers scout and other stuff. He did a bunch of other stuff for the team, but also a football fanatic. He is also a longtime friend and a Raiders aficionado. He'll be a regular contributor here to Silver and Black today. Welcome, Chaz.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you got the shades going today. I like it. It's a little Vegas-oriented, right?
Future's bright here.
I'll
I'll tell you what, I've always been told I got a great face for radio. So here I am.
Yes. Well, that tends to be for a lot of us in radio, right? So Chaz will be here, and he'll join us as well. Each week, we meet here with you to talk Raiders football, to take your questions and to debate the state of Oakland, soon to be Las Vegas Raiders football. We want you to be the third host. That's right. Third wheel, third host, whatever you want to call it. Call in at 702-889-5978. That's 702-889-5978. Tell us what you think. Tell us you think we're brilliant, or tell us you think we're hacks. Whatever it is you have to say, we'll give you the platform. Reminder, we are also streaming today worldwide on radio.com. If you don't have the radio.com app, folks, you got to pick it up. It is amazing. You can listen to sports radio and music from around the country. Chaz, have you downloaded radio.com yet?
I did.
You did?
I did. I've got kids. They help me with all my millennial needs.
That's right. So you know what you're up to. That's good.
Yep.
So download that. Also, we tweeted out just a little while ago a link. We are streaming live on video again up on YouTube. We tweeted that out with an address. Go subscribe and watch. Always a lively listener and viewer chat there as well. It's really good stuff. I love our fans there. They're always talking to each other and point, counterpoint, you name it. They're having fun there. So make sure you go check us out on YouTube and subscribe there so you don't miss any of the videos. If you're not a YouTube person, you can always also catch us on Facebook Live, Periscope, via the Sports Radio 1140 AM Twitter handle as well. So you can check it out there too. So make sure you do that. Also, you can check us out on Twitch if you're a gamer. Like Chaz, I know your son's a gamer.
That's right.
So you can say, hey, watch your old man on Twitch, and he'll be like, what?
That'll never happen.
What are you talking about, Dad? I know Twitch. What are you doing on Twitch? You playing something? No, I'm just on radio.
He doesn't have time for that.
No. So you could do that as well. Always, too, check out our website, which is, of course, silverandblacktoday.com. There you always find news dedicated to everything Raiders football with a Las Vegas twist. I think always great coverage from our staff, and I think a different twist than other sites. Also, we have an award-winning podcast most weeks. It's been a couple weeks since we've done one just due to travel. So subscribe to the podcast, which includes the on-demand versions of this show as well, which you can find on iTunes, Google Music, Spotify, Spreaker, SoundCloud, blah, 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 blah. You name it, that's where we're at. We're proud to say we're Nevada Press Association's top podcast of the year for 2018. So there you go. We're award-winning. I love that.
Very nice.
All right, so now we've gotten through some of that. Now we're going to break down some of the news from today and from this week in Raider Nation so that you can catch up with what's going on. So here's a look around Raider Nation and what's going to be going on this show. So we'll set topics. Now, in our first hour, we usually welcome, after the break, my cousin Vinny Bonsignori from the Athletic Los Angeles. But Vinny has been in Denver covering the Rams. They've been up there practicing. They thought they were going to play in Mexico City, which is a topic we'll get into in the next segment. But Vinny was up there with them, and the fires in Los Angeles kept them grounded and practicing in Denver for the week. So Vinny's going to be towards the end of the show. When he comes on, we'll check with him on how everyone's doing with the fires down there, of course. That and also our friends up in the Bay Area, all the Raider fans, and everyone impacted by the fire. It's just terrible. And having lived in San Diego when we had a huge fire issue as well, having to evacuate my own home, I understand where you're at, and our thoughts go up to all of you up there. And, of course, the Thousand Oaks shooting last week, there's just so much going on. But we'll also talk to Vinny about football, what it's like in locker rooms when your team is 1-8. There's a lot of discontent, or is it overblown? He'll give us insight. He'll tell us about the building teams long-term versus short-term, which is another subject for today as well. Then we'll devote an entire segment to the Raiders rebuild, Chaz. I hope you're ready for this.
Oh, yeah.
And it will be different this time, I think, and that's the silverandblacktoday.com's Jay Burrows. If you haven't read his piece, do it. It went really viral this week. We'll talk about why the Raider fans should sit back and think about what's being done and how it's being done. We want your calls, though. We want to hear what you have to say. Forget what I have to say. What does Raider Nation think? 702-889-5978. Also, we'll talk about Derek Carr. I'm going to defend Derek Carr. I'm going to be, Chaz, Derek Carr's lawyer in the court of public opinion today.
That's tough playing devil's advocate.
And we'll see what happens with that. But I want to do that. We're going to talk about why I think that there needs to be a little bit of patience with folks with Derek Carr and why people are dead wrong, why he deserves more time. But we're going to have it as not an emotional argument, but as a fact-based argument. So I dare you to call in and prove me wrong. I don't think anybody can. I don't think anybody out there has an argument as good as mine.
I tend to defer.
So call in 702-889-5978. Tell me if I'm wrong. Then in the second hour, we'll fire up the attorney Michael Troiano Newsmaker line. We'll talk to ArizonaCardinals.com senior writer Darren Urban about the Redbirds and their own brand of rebuild. While they've expected to be better than 2-7 in what was dubbed a transition year, they've struggled, but there are bright spots that could present big problems for the Raiders today. And Urban will tell us how rookie quarterback Josh Rosen is progressing and about the surprising Cardinals defense. Great interview, so make sure you turn in. Also, at 9:30, bottom of the second hour, Tommy White, Secretary, Treasurer, and Business Manager of the Labor's Local Union 872, will call in on the attorney Michael Troiano Newsmaker line. He will refute live what he did in my story this week on silverandblacktoday.com and tell you there is no shortage. Again, there is no shortage of ironworkers or any labor for that matter on the Raiders' new stadium site in Las Vegas. White will also give us an overall update on stadium progress, which is getting pretty exciting. Chaz, you been by? You see that steel going up there?
Hey, it's great. You can see the skeleton of the stadium going up. You know, you start welling up with pride, like they're coming to Vegas.
You can see the shape of it, right?
Yeah.
It looks like a stadium.
It's unbelievable how fast it's going up.
Oh, I know. It's crazy. So Tommy will be with us there as that steel is going up at a record pace, so make sure you join us for that. We'll close out the show with Chaz and I talking to Vinny, but also breaking down the Cardinals and Raiders battle in Arizona and give you our picks for the games and how each team can take a chance and has a chance to win in the battle for the first pick in the NFL draft, I think. There you have it, Raider Nation. You're up to date. We've set topics on the table here on Silver and Black Today on CBS Sports Radio. Now it's your turn. Pick up the phone. Get on the air. Give us a call at 702-889-5978. Okay, Chaz, so let's jump into this a little bit because what I want to talk about is this week we had a little bit of an uproar, and the folks who hate the fact that the Raiders are coming to Las Vegas jumped on it too, and that was Channel 8 here in Las Vegas, KLAS TV, had said they would not air the Raider game locally because of lack of interest, right? So they said this. So Oakland, some of the folks in Oakland who are anti-Vegas, and that's not a big contingent, that's just some folks, they jumped on it and said, see, Vegas doesn't care about the Raiders. They won't even play their games.
You know, I think they were saying that a lot about the Golden Knights when they first came.
That's
and
true.
Then you start winning, and all of a sudden it's sold out. The whole city rallies around them.
Yeah.
I feel like it's going to be the same thing with the Raiders. They're not here yet, so nobody really has a taste for it.
Right.
As soon as they show up, I feel like it's going to just, I don't want to say spread like wildfire, but
Yeah. But they're 1-8. Okay, so you understand that a little bit. And then you also have the fact that, they're not here yet. But if you go around town, like I'm sure you do too, Chaz, I go into stores, there's Raider gear everywhere. I was at Costco the other day. They just opened a new one up in Henderson. And so my wife's like, we got to go to Costco. So we go to Costco. I might as well just turn my whole paycheck to Costco and Target,
right?
By the way. So we go over there, and there is all Raider gear. I mean, it's everywhere. So there is excitement here. But KLAS, Raider Nation, when Raider Nation gets motivated, there's nothing that can stop them.
They move mountains.
They do. And so what happened was people started talking about, look, how can Channel 8 not show the Raiders in Las Vegas? And guess what happened? Channel 8 changed their mind.
Uh-huh.
So Raider Nation, good job on that one. But I think, too, that it goes to show that sometimes and when it comes to TV and media, and I know we're in it, but people get lost in the fact that, well, nobody cares because they're having a crappy year. Well, Raider Nation always cares because they're going to at least complain about how bad it is.
Exactly. Well, there's fans everywhere. It doesn't matter which team, I going and walking around the city, I see Raider gear everywhere. Growing up in San Diego as a Raider fan, I always felt out of place. Being here, I feel like I'm home.
Yeah.
It already feels like a Raider, home turf stadium. People, everybody's already into it.
Yeah.
So I think maybe some of these people live in their bubble, and the people around them don't care about the Raiders. Yeah. And so they think, okay, let's not go that direction. And then all of a sudden, the landslide comes their way, and they say, "Oh, wait a minute."
Well, and there's a lot of those misconceptions, right? I mean, you remember, Chaz, I grew up in San Diego as a Charger fan as a kid before I basically said goodbye to them.
Appreciate you coming over to the dark side.
But doing that, you have your misconceptions about Raider fans, and sometimes it's proven right by the small contingent of people who behave poorly.
Yep.
But so I think people in Vegas, you have so many transplants, just like you and I are transplants here, who don't understand that that's not everybody. But clearly Vegas, I think, despite the fact that it tends to be a winner's town because of the gaming. Yep. So if the Broncos are winning, there tends to be more Broncos bumper stickers around. If the Seahawks are winning, you see Seahawks license plate frames, right?
Correct.
But there's always been a strong contingent of Raider fans because of Los Angeles and people who've moved here.
And kind of geographically where we're situated, you get and I feel like even coming here 5-10 years ago, they would show the Raider game locally.
Yeah.
So it was always kind of their hometown team anyway. I guess the Chargers and the Rams, when they were here, since it was so close, that was what they would show. But it always kind of felt like a Raiders town to me anyways, just coming here visiting.
Yeah, and we've always said that it's sort of like a match made in heaven because of just Vegas and its reputation and the Raiders and the attitude. Now with gaming being more acceptable everywhere, it's a little bit different, right? Because now, after the Supreme Court decision, there's no longer this stigma with gaming because now it's in New Jersey. I mean, the New Jersey's home to the Jets and the Giants, by the way.
Right.
And now it's going to be everywhere.
Well, I remember way back in the day, UNLV basketball, you couldn't bet on them.
Right.
And it was taboo, just sports gambling in general. And, I think it's great. It's great for all sports. NBA, MLB, all of them across the board are going to be benefiting from this.
Yeah, no, that's true, and I think that you're just going to see more and more of it. And it's actually becoming, if you look at even like what the Golden Knights have done with their partnership with William Hill, and so there's always going to be a gaming angle to it, and it's always going to be, I think, a bigger part of the game. But the fact that Channel 8 came around was due to the pressure of Raider Nation. So I appreciate them doing that and making it right. And so now folks in Las Vegas will be able to watch the Raiders, which is good. So now, whether or not they win, whether or not it's a game they want to watch.
Well, hopefully by then, I know we're going to get into it more in the show.
Yeah.
By then, they're going to be back on track. They're going to be competitive. I mean, the only thing you can do is turn these draft picks into winning.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Bottom line.
No, and that's going to be something we'll talk about when we come back from the break here as we pay some bills because that's what we need to do. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about what it's like to be in a locker room when things are not going well. Okay, so Chaz, as I said, a former front office guy, scout with the Los Angeles Lakers, will talk about some of his experiences with that. We'll also talk about later in the show and later in the next segment, we'll talk about Derek Carr. We'll talk about building the right way versus building the wrong way when you're rebuilding your team. Because that's what we have to talk about at Raider Nation, because it's not been a good year. You're listening to the Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 AM.
he wants to be traded. It's DEFCON 5. I mean, it really does get heated in there. And it's all hands on deck. You've got to do everything you can to right the ship.
Yeah. Well, but here's my question for you, though. So when you're in that situation and things are not going well, so nobody's really 100% happy because it's a game. Everything's better when you're winning. I mean, it just is, right? It doesn't matter. How does it permeate the organization? So you have the players and the coaches. Clearly, you see that, right? So if you're a fan, if you're a Raider fan out there and you're watching the Raiders and you're watching Derek Carr struggle and you're watching John Gruden dropping F-bombs on the sideline and looking dejected, because he just does. He kind of wears his emotions on his sleeve.
Yep.
How does that permeate the organization, and how do you keep it from really doing long-term damage to the players who will be around when you start the next process?
Everything starts at the top. So, Gruden now, he's basically the top, right? I mean, Mark Davis pushed all his chips in on this guy, and I think it's great. When you're a team in transition, like the Raiders, not only are they in transition, they're moving. So you need to have some stability there. And putting John Gruden back in place, I think is probably the smartest move we could have done.
Well, and Chaz, isn't that, I mean, to me, I think this is lost on people every single day, okay? And that is stability. Because you talked about it in the Laker organization before Dr. Buss passed away and things kind of jumbled around.
Yep.
But even so, it was a family business. So you had that stability. So even when Lakers had down years, there was always that stability. You knew it was going to take maybe a couple years, but that you would right the ship, right?
Exactly. Dr. Buss, arguably the greatest owner in all of professional sports.
Right.
Here he comes in, lightning in a bottle right off the bat. You get magic all through the 80s. You're doing great. 90s come around, not so great. Boom. You trade for Shaq. You draft Kobe. You got lightning in a bottle again. You're off and running. So when you have that, and then when we go through the crisis that we're going through in the mid-2000s, you looked at Dr. Buss, and he's this calming presence, and Al Davis, he was a pioneer. He was a visionary. You can't argue with the things he's done. He changed the game. And then all through the 80s, I think he got a little, his legal battles. I don't know. He started losing focus of what was happening. I feel like Mark, if anything, he instilled in Mark, I don't think Mark has the same moxie maybe. But the one smart thing that he knows is put the right people in the right positions.
That's right.
And, you're going to be fine. And Dr. Buss was the same way. You're smart enough to recognize, hey, I need to put the right people here, and we're going to get it done. And that way the fans and the community, everybody, you feel like you get that stability, you're going to be fine.
Right.
So I know right now we're kind of a ship without a rudder. It feels like we're just, floating aimlessly. But I got to believe in Gruden. I got to believe he's got a plan. And you can't foresee the Mac thing happening. And he rolled with it. And I think, ultimately he got a great deal out of it.
Yeah. Well, no, and I mean, that's where I think, Chaz, a lot of people go towards the money all the time. They talk about, well, Gruden's making this kind of money, making that kind of money. At the end of the day, who cares, right? And I think you can't judge, and people out there can call me an apologist, call me a backside kiss or whatever they want. The reality is, unless you have the stability, and you talked about Al Davis. Al Davis also, I think, had a hard time with the salary cap because Al Davis's whole point of view was, I'm going to win. I'm going to go out. I'm going to do whatever it takes to win. And he used to be able to do that, and then the system changed. But I think and when you have an owner, and you see it with the Lakers now, right? You see it with after Dr. Buss dies, when the patriarch dies and moves on, then you have a series of instabilities because the organization has to find its new grounding.
That's right.
And I think with the Raiders, that's what they're doing. People want to give John Gruden one season and then they declare him a failure. I think that's ridiculous.
Yeah, there's a reason they gave him a 10-year contract, right?
Right. And to me, though, you can't judge it. Now, if you get into year 3 and things haven't improved, okay, then I can start talking about, is this the right move? Is this the right guy? But I just don't think you can do it. And we're going to talk a little bit in the next segment, too, about the rebuild and the trades that happened this year and all that as well. We'll get more in depth into that. But for you inside that organization, what is a turning point? Is it just something good that happens? Is it you start to see progress even if it's small?
Yeah, absolutely. Any little spark, any little thing you can do, you start working the phone, you start acquiring assets, you just anything you can do to just start building that foundation again. Each little brick in the wall, you're going to start building it, and you're going to grow. And okay, so Kobe ultimately wasn't traded, and we went down DEFCON 4, DEFCON 3. We went back down, and everything started getting back in place. And we acquired some assets from Miami Heat. Lamar Odom, he turns into the sixth man of the year. I don't know if we win those championships without him. He's great. As he went, we went. I mean, if he had a great game, we crushed it. And we got a couple of assets. All of a sudden, here comes a trade for Pau Gasol, and we happen to have the right pieces. Boom, you get Gasol in there. All of a sudden, you got lightning in the bottle again. Boom, go to 3 finals in a row, win 2 of them.
Yeah.
You need those kind of things to happen. I felt like we had that with Carr and Mac, and you've got your building blocks, and you go from there. Unfortunately, it didn't pan out, but the next thing's going to come along, and you just got to keep working at it, and it's going to come back. It's a cycle.
Yeah, and the Carr trade obviously is still something that is sensitive for Raiders fans, and I get it. I mean, the guy's one of the best players in the league. You look at what the Bears are overachieving partly because of him there, not all because he's there. I mean, Trubisky's surprised the hell out of me because I still don't think he's that great. But
he's up and down. Yeah,
he's up and down. But they have a big game against Minnesota today, but they've done well. And so I can understand Raider fans, you trade away our best player. But I want to get into that and talk about that after the break, because I think in life, and I've been guilty of it too, you sometimes think short term. You want the short term payout.
Yeah, I think everybody does that. It's easy to do. It's hard to look into the future. It's hard to look down the road and say, okay, we've got a plan. And you hear it all the time with these new coaches, these new GMs. They come in, they have a 5-year plan because they have a 5-year contract.
Yeah. They have a 5-year plan, exactly. It's going to take me all 5 years to get there, right? But yeah, we're gonna talk more about the rebuild and why I think that this is much different than any in the past when we come back. Also, we'll talk about that Mac trade and why it was maybe a stroke of brilliance, says our own Chris Reed on silverandblacktoday.com. If you haven't read that one, go read it. But we will talk all of that, and we'll take your calls. 702-889-5978 is the number here on CBS Sports Radio 1140 AM. We'll be back right after this break here on Silver and Black Today.
Michael Troiano. The only way to take Silver and Black today with you is with the radio.com app. Download it today and search CBS Sports Radio 1140 in Las Vegas and listen to us anytime, anywhere.
All right, welcome back. We are here on the Silver and Black today. We are talking Raider football ahead of the Silver and Blacks game against the Cardinal Red. That's right, the Arizona Cardinals down in Glendale, Arizona. Today, the 1-8 Raiders meet the 2-7 Cardinals. We're going to talk to Darren Urban from azcardinals.com. He's the senior writer there. We'll talk to him about that game and how the Cardinals have been doing so far this year, which has been a mixed bag. They are in a sort of rebuild of their own, although they called it a transition year before it began, and now they look at it as a rebuild as well. So we will discuss that. What we're going to talk about now, though, is this rebuild and how things are going for the Raiders, because this week on silverandblacktoday.com, our own Jay Burrows wrote a piece called Raiders Choices Show Move Toward Championship Caliber, Not Mediocrity. And the premise of his argument is this. Yes, it hurt to trade Khalil Mack. Yes, in some ways it hurt to trade Amari Cooper to the Cowboys. Yes, those are all painful things when you think you're on the cusp of maybe being in the playoffs again. But if you look at it from a long-term perspective, are you trying to build a team, Chaz, as I bring Chaz Osborne back in, are you trying to build a team that is good enough to make the playoffs, or do you want to build a long-term winner with the goal of winning a Super Bowl? And are they mutually the same, or can they be different? Now, Chaz, I say the reason you had to tear it down was everything looks like one thing from the outside, and you know this from your career in professional sports. You look on the outside at something, oh, that looks like a pretty good situation. Then you get brought in, and you're inside, i.e. John Gruden, and you say, holy crap, we don't have what I thought we had, and all these vets that we signed aren't as good as I thought. We got to tear this down. So here we are. We're at the point, and Jay's argument is you had to tear it down because if you want to build it long-term, you have to build what you talked about in the last segment, Chaz, stability and something that can grow over time. Do you think, Chaz, the Raiders were maybe closer than John Gruden thinks?
You know, at the beginning of the year, I feel like, you know, with you got Mack, you got Carr, and you brought in all these guys to fill all these spots. I felt like we had a really good shot. You know, 9-6. If the ball bounces your way like it did in 2016, we led the league in turnover ratio.
Right.
You know, we're 10-6, and we're in the playoffs. You know, so I put a little bit on. I put a lot actually on Mack. You know, because if he sticks around, you know, and Jay in his article, he's right. What do we have right now? 4 wins, maybe 5 wins. You know, like I said, the ball bounced our way, maybe 6. If Mack is there, you know, obviously we win the Denver game, we win the Miami game, and the other ones are a toss-up. So I put a lot of it on Mack. It kind of threw a monkey wrench in the whole plan this season, but that's what happens in management, professional sports. You just you're on the fly. You got to adjust on the fly, and you know, he made the best of a bad situation.
Yeah,
and it's going to turn out to be fine. That's just what happens. Do you want to be mediocre? Some people are happy. Cincinnati Bengals, you make the playoffs 5 years in a row for a small market team. You know, you got to be thrilled with that. That's kind of you know, and they've been to 2 Super Bowls, so they do have a nice history there. But are you happy making the playoffs every year and losing in the wild card game, losing in the first round? I say probably. But for teams like the Raiders, the Lakers, you know, you only have one focus, and that's championships. So when you look at the situation and you say, you know, we're only going to be mediocre.
Yeah.
The thing, the casual fan, and most people don't realize, 80% of the teams in all of sports rebuild every 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah.
You don't notice it because it's, you know, it's something small, but every team rebuilds. Luckily, you know, Lakers, like I said, they had all those runs they didn't have to do, and it was subtle, but, you know, they had to do a few things. You get the same thing, you know, obviously Spurs, you have that long-term run,
Sure.
like I said earlier.
Well, but
Patriots.
Chaz, the thing that I think holds that all together too is the fact that you had, again, we bring up the word stability. So when you had to retool, when you had to say, you know, you had to say goodbye to 2 or 3 veterans that helped you win a championship in that case, then you got to bring in guys that can then retool and get ready to build another one. And so I think what's happened and with the Raiders, unfortunately, and why they're fans, I feel terrible for Raider Nation, is that it's happened so many times in the last 20 years for the Raiders without a good outcome. And I would argue that the main reason that it's happened that way is exactly why Gruden's doing it this way now. And that is you want to, if we just had a quarterback, if we just had a running back, if we just traded for this guy. And then, of course, you didn't execute well on drafts either. And that hurts you as well.
Yep.
So now what ends up happening is you're okay, great. Cincinnati was a great example, actually. Cincinnati, we're going to make the playoffs every year, at least five out of 8 years, let's say, we're going to make the playoffs.
Yeah, they made it 5 in a row.
Right.
6 out of 7.
Right. And so they get there, and that's great. But I think that's the danger of being in the middle. And so if you're a team, and I think you're going to see much more of this in pro sports with forward-thinking progressive organizations like you saw with the Philadelphia 76ers recently.
Right.
Okay?
Or with
the
Sam Hinkie angle there.
Yeah, or with the Houston Astros in baseball, which is you know what? We're going to jettison all this stuff, but that's because what we have is we have a house. The house is protecting us. It's got walls. It's got plumbing. The plumbing leaks a little bit. The walls have some termites, but we can still live in it. Instead, what John Gruden is saying is we're going to tear down the walls because we're not going to – this house isn't going to last us 30 years, and it's not going to –
we only live in mansions, right?
That's right. We're not. So again, I think that is the reason why it's being done. And let's talk about the Dallas Cowboys. You and I talked about this before the show started, which is the Dallas Cowboys, and Doug Gottlieb brought this up on his show, which really piqued my interest on it, was – the Cowboys are in a position where they have Dak Prescott as their quarterback. And I don't think Dak Prescott is an elite quarterback. I think he's a little bit above average.
Jury's still out.
Yeah, for you. For me, I'm just making a judgment because I can be a jerk sometimes. But I just think that he's not. I don't think he's ever going to be an elite quarterback. But is he a good starting NFL quarterback? Absolutely. Absolutely. Then you have Ezekiel Elliott. Now you have Amari Cooper. You're going to have to spread money around. And suddenly, the Cowboys have a lot more holes than people want to say. I mean, you heard what Michael Irvin said over the past few weeks, too, about it, and he's a big cheerleader for his ex-team.
Troy Aikman as well.
And Troy Aikman, yeah, very outspoken recently this week, especially about what the needs of what they need and what they have now. And so now you're in that position where, okay, you have Amari Cooper. Let's say Amari Cooper goes nuts and has an amazing time. He's got to at least get $15 million next year, might more. Then you got Dak and Zach. Zeke, Zach. I want to call him Zach because it rhymed with Dak. But anyway, so they're coming off their rookie deal. So now you got to give them a ton of money, okay? And that's going to limit your ability to pay others. Now you can structure. They all have capologists. The Raiders have 2 very good ones, including Dan Ventrell. They have good folks there who can work around it.
I'm not sure if Dallas has one.
This is Jerry Jones.
Okay,
I like that kid. Let's write a check. So you have that, but now what you're stuck doing is you're stuck with 3 great players. Let's say you all think they're all 3 great. But then what do you do? What flexibility do you have to go out and get a big free agent to shore up your defense, to shore up the offensive line, to get another tight end, which they now don't have one because Witten retired, which they didn't expect. So to me, if you're doing it this way, it's much different than any other time in the I didn't grow up a Raider fan. I'm not a big Raider Nation fan, like all these folks who listen to us who are amazing people. That's not me. So I'm looking at it really from an objective point of view, and I just think it's a smart thing to do.
It is. Okay, so let's start with the process. If you're talking about a rebuild, I know the popular thing now, you're talking about the Sixers and Sam Hinkie, and it's not pretty. I think it's because those 3 seasons, they were 1963 one season, next year 1864, and then 10 and 72.
10 and 72. Oof.
That's... and that's going to get you a lot of attention,
right.
And the fans aren't happy with that. Media is going to crush you for it. But ultimately, you get Joel Embiid, you get Ben Simmons. They had a couple of bad drafts. Michael Carter-Williams didn't pan out. They took Okafor with the 3rd pick. He's not even around anymore. But you still, like I keep saying, you got these building blocks, right? And now that turns into a situation where you can get a Jimmy Butler and other people are going to want to come. So,
who hit a nice game-winning shot last night.
Yeah. So it's already paying dividends. So, the process works. It's always going to come down to draft picks. So you're talking about the Cowboys, and they've got these 3 solid players, which you don't agree that they're solid.
No, I think they're solid. I just don't think that
they're
Dak Prescott is
enough
an
to
elite
get you over
quarterback.
the hump. And I agree with you. He's not.
Well, you can win with what I would
You're
consider
going to win,
a
but
good quarterback.
I don't think he's elite, and you're not going to get all the way to the big show, and that's ultimately what you want.
True.
So
True.
I'm just using them as an example. You've got these three guys. Now other people are going to want to come play. Now you're saying they don't have enough money to pay other people, but kind of like the Golden State Warriors or any other team, when you get to that certain level, good players want to come win championships.
Yeah.
So they're going to come play for less.
And we'll talk about that too, because a lot of people say, well, nobody's going to sign with the Raiders now because they're so bad. And it's like, first of all, money talks, BS walks. First of all. And second of all, if you believe in what they're doing, you will come and play, even if it means a year or two of 500 ball. So we'll see. But when we come back, we're going to continue to talk about this. But we're also going to talk about Derek Carr. I'm going to tell you why you're all wrong to give up on Derek Carr. You're all wrong. Call me, 702-889-5978. Tell me why I'm wrong. You're listening to the Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m. in Las Vegas. Hold on.
In life, just like in football,
President of the Raiders. You're listening to Silver and Black Today.
All right. Thank you, Mark Bedane, president of the Raiders, for bringing us back in with the bumper. All right. We are back. We are talking Raiders rebuild. We want to hear from you, 702-889-5978. Call and tell us why we're full of it or why you're better. You have a better opinion on it, whatever it may be. I think it's the right move. I think we're doing the right thing if I am the Raiders. And if I am someone in the organization associated with the Raiders, I would say, hey, we're doing the right thing because we don't have the pieces in place to do it. So before we left off for the break, Chaz, we were talking about that and talking about other examples. You used some basketball examples. There's football examples as well. And to me, I get the Khalil Mack thing hard to stomach. At the same time, yes, you go back 2016, 12-4, Derek Carr gets injured. Unfortunately, we never know what would have happened had he stayed healthy in that run. Because
I was at that game. I'll tell you what, I've been to a lot of football games. I've never been at a Raider game after a win and felt so depressed. Nobody's high-fiving on the way out. Everybody's walking out like it was a funeral.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you lose your guy.
With social media, everybody instantly knew it was a broken foot. Before the game was over, like there goes the season.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing. It was tough. You don't know what would happen. A lot of people, and I agree to somewhat, and some people get angry about this, that season they won barely, but it doesn't matter. When you win barely, and even if you're playing above your talent level, it doesn't matter. You're on a magical run.
That's right.
We saw it in Las Vegas with hockey last year, right? Now that team is below 500. So it's one of those deals.
You catch lightning in a bottle, anything can happen.
That's right.
You hear David and Goliath stories
absolutely
all the time.
Absolutely. So did the Raiders play better than their roster was? Probably, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't take away from anything that they did. So then last year you have just a tough year. You have a tough year with injuries and people who didn't play up to their abilities. And so that all happens. But what you have to do is, as fans, are you the best one to make the assessment, is the team closer? I would say no. You're a fan. I'm not saying you don't have importance because without fans, there's no football. Okay, but John Gruden gets in there. He's been given the keys to the car by Mark Davis. And he came in and said, look, this thing needs a transmission. It needs a new engine, actually. The tires are good. The windshield's not cracked, but it needs everything else. And so now you have to, and you talked about it, Chaz, in the last segment, trust the process, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to trust this process. You have to trust. If you don't trust in Gruden and you think he's a hack, fine. Then I respect your opinion, your disagreement. But otherwise, you have to trust in that. And, there are other examples of teams who've done this, right, Chaz?
Yeah, okay, we're talking rebuild. So I was thinking back early 2000s. We could talk about the Carolina Panthers. That team with Steve Smith, Julius Peppers, Deshaun Foster. They drafted those guys. They picked up Jake Delhomme. I think Rodney Peete was the quarterback, but Delhomme came in. Took them all the way to the Super Bowl. They picked up Stephen Davis. Actually, Rod Smart. Las Vegas fans might remember him as He Hate Me. Yeah, great.
That's right.
So they go to the Super Bowl, and Delhomme has his Nick Foles moment or whatever. And then a few years later, the team is 14, and, at the end of the nice run they had with John Fox, it's over. They get the number 1 draft pick. Boom, you got Cam Newton. Next year, you draft Luke Kuechly. And, a couple years after that, you add a few pieces, and they're back in the Super Bowl again. So there's your quarterback. So, the reason I brought that up, you got a great quarterback, you got a dominant defender, i.e. Derek Carr, Khalil Mack. You add some pieces, you can go all the way. They didn't win it, but that's why I was a little upset with Mack, because you got that foundation. People want to come play with you. Okay, so there's one example. A better example of the Seahawks, right around the same time. They had a nice run winning a wild card game, and let's see, they went to the Super Bowl.
Well, the thing is though, like, so the you remember the Seahawks, Holmgren goes there, right? And they make those 2 runs. They go to 2 Super Bowls. They lose them both, but they established that kind of core,
that culture. That's one. That's another thing we didn't get into.
Yeah.
The culture and the core. So yeah, they go to the Super Bowl. They have a nice couple seasons, and then same thing. Holmgren, they have a bad season. He's gone. So now they go to the draft. 2010, they get Earl Thomas, Golden Tate, Cam Chancellor. They added Marshawn that year as a free agent. And then 2011, Richard Sherman. 2012, you get Russell Wilson, Bobby Wagner. and boom, they're right back. They go to 2 Super Bowls. They win one. They should have won both of them.
They should have. Well, yeah.
Okay, but the
Fourth
reason I
and
brought that up, the draft.
Yeah.
They built through the draft. Same thing. Those Panthers, both those early teams. Those are just examples. If you look back at everybody, you build through the draft. Name me some free agents. We were just talking about this in the last, 15, 20 years that have done. It's hard. Peyton Manning, 2012. I think is the only one I can really think of. He goes to the Broncos, Super Bowl. They win one, they lose one. Drew Brees, I guess, is another one I could think of.
Yeah,
they get.
But they built around him too.
They built
right?
around
they
him.
built around him.
But those are really the only free agents. I mean, obviously basketball. You think of LeBron going to Miami.
Yeah.
Shaq, obviously.
Back to Cleveland.
Shaq, yeah. No, but he went to Miami. Boom, they went
Yeah.
to. That's a free
Yeah.
agent. Shaq going to the Lakers, obviously, is a huge free agent pickup. I guess Deion Sanders in the early '90s when he went to San Francisco, and then the next year he jumped ship to Dallas. They both won, but he's just a small. He was a small piece. He was a bit. I think they win both of those. Super
Well, he was a
Bowls without
generational
him.
player, and those guys, and you could argue Khalil Mack, but your point about the draft, I think, is right on, Chaz. Which is you hear a lot of people in Raider Nation saying they got to nail this draft. They got to every draft because they traded Khalil Mack. Those 2 first-round draft picks have to be just perfect. And listen, the reality is, I don't care if you're Bill Belichick, Bill Walsh, Vince Lombardi. It doesn't matter. You talk about the great names in football, coaching, and talent evaluators. You never hit 100% on your drafts, right? I mean, you did it
with the Sixers.
You were a scout. You scout guys, and you have all the information you need. They look great. Everybody evaluates them and says, yep, that's our guy. And then you go get them, and guess what? They don't work out.
Yeah.
So will the Raiders first – you want to execute and get first-round draft picks and have them work, but there's lots of examples in Raider history, of course, but there's lots of examples in the NFL of guys that you draft number 1 or in the first round that you think are sure things, and they don't work out. The reality is, as Michael Lombardi, who's been on the show many times, talks about, is, look, you're probably going to hit on, if you're really good, you're going to hit on 40% of your draft picks. I'm not talking about first round.
That's a good number.
That's a good number.
No, that year the Seahawks, they actually drafted Bruce Irvin before Russell Wilson and Bobby Wagner.
Yeah,
right.
So they had a great year. And so that's where a good draft, to your point, and an excellent draft can change everything. So now if the Raiders, because they have 5 first-round picks in the next 2 years, if they're at 60 or 70% nailing those drafts, then we're talking a whole different ballgame, right?
Right. Hey, even 50%.
Mm-hmm.
If you can get one generational player out of those 5 draft picks or 2 just, solid foundations, you're happy with that.
Yeah. And that's
it's not an exact science. Like you said, we put hours and hours of work into the draft. These guys, we turn them inside and out. The thing is, they've all got a talent level that goes to here. You don't know you don't know if they're Kobe Bryant and they want to work to be the greatest player ever, or if they just want to get paid and they're happy.
Well, we're going to talk about why it's important to build around coach and quarterback after the top of the hour sports update here. We're having a good conversation on the Raiders and their rebuild. When we come back, we'll talk about Derek Carr, and I will defend him. I challenge you to prove me wrong. You're listening to the Silver and Black today, only on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m. here in Las Vegas. Hold on. We want to welcome you back here to the Silver and Black today.
We got to talk Raiders, baby.
We got to talk Raiders. Yeah, Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140 in Las Vegas. I am Scott Branson. I am joined by Chaz Osborne here, and we are talking Raider football. Hey-o. Now, the thing is, Chaz, we went out to the break, before the break, talking about the rebuild, and one of the things that you talked about during one of the breaks as well was if you look at things like go back to the golden days of the 49ers with both Joe Montana and Steve Young and Bill Walsh. Then you had now, of course, Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. Building around the quarterback and the coach. Now, we had on our Facebook page, Xander Huerta, who's watching us, said this. He said, the thing is, I don't trust Gruden, the GM, to build the team up. Besides that, the Mac trade looks more and more like a straight-up robbery. Now, you don't trust Gruden. Okay, I get that. He has not proven himself as a GM. I can't argue that with Xander. I don't necessarily agree. I think I have trust that he will be okay. But the second part of that the Mac trade looks like robbery, I don't know how you can say that yet. First of all, you haven't taken the 2 draft picks that you got from the trade, number one. Number two, what have the Bears done? I don't care if the Bears are playing well. They haven't done crap yet. Now, if they beat Minnesota today and look like they're going to win that division, okay. Then I can start to say, all right, you know what? That trade really set them up. But you can't evaluate the trade's value or what it means to the Raiders until their piece of it comes to play. What the Bears do and what Khalil Mack has no bearing on whether the trade was good or not for the Raiders.
Well, like you said, people aren't looking ahead. They're seeing the small picture.
And Xander, we love you, man. We appreciate you. I'm not yelling at you. I'm just taking the counterpoint.
Xander's a great name, too. I love that.
I do, too.
I think because Mac had, those first 2 games, and I don't know if it was a Monday night game or a Sunday night.
Oh, he went nuts.
Mac, he's got a strip sack. He's got so right away you see Mac like flourishing on another team, and then it just adds salt to the wound. You're like, hey, come on. But obviously, this is going to be a 3, 4, 5 year thing until we can even make a decision on if it was a good thing or a bad thing. We're going to see these draft picks pan out. So it's a long time down the road before. I'm kind of with him with Gruden as a GM. Obviously, back in the day, Gruden was a great coach. He took us almost to the promised land. I don't know, the Tuck rule, that was something
sensitive issue.
All Raider Nation is still.
Join us at 4 p.m. today for our new NFL postgame show, The PG, only on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
The most in-depth coverage of the Silver and Black as they set their sights on Las Vegas for 2020. Live from the CBS Sports Radio 1140 studios, it's Silver and Black today. Join the conversation by calling 702-889-5978. Now, here's Scott Gulbranson and Matt Gutierrez.
Okay, we're going to start the hour again. Sorry, guys. We
like the Raiders. We have the reset button.
Somebody threw water on the gremlin, right?
That's right.
It kind of popped up, and so now we're dealing with that. So sorry about that, folks.
Midnight.
So you got to get our intro. I wonder where it was. Yeah. It didn't play at the beginning of the hour. So
I feel re-energized.
That's right. So we are talking, of course, about the Raiders, and you were making the point, Chaz, and I'll let you continue, on John Gruden as the GM and your view kind of that.
I mean, the jury's still out on him being a GM. We know he's a good coach. The thing is, I think we were talking about was quarterback and coach, and he took a journeyman, Rich Gannon. He turned him into an MVP. We took all the way to the Super Bowl, right? And then the next year, he takes a journeyman, Brad Johnson. It takes him all the way to the Super Bowl, wins the Super Bowl. And it was, obviously the Raiders didn't change anything, so Gruden pretty much knew our whole scheme, and they had planned for it, and it was a blowout of epic proportions. But he's obviously a good quarterbacks coach, and I think we do have a good quarterback with Carr. I'm not sure if he's still smarting from that foot injury or the back injury last year, but let's just give him another season, reevaluate it. Yeah, I know we're going to get into the Carr discussion here, but as far as quarterback coaching goes, I think we've got it nailed right now.
Yeah, well, and some people may argue with you because of Carr, but I think of the year he's had. But I want to talk about that specifically, and whether or not Gruden as a GM, or at least a shadow GM, since Reggie McKenzie is still there, with all due respect to him, we'll see how that all goes down. But when you look at Derek Carr, so I want to talk about Carr because I think some of the criticism is fair, and I think some of the criticism is unfair. And let me tell you why. Number one, the offensive line. There's no hiding the importance of an offensive line to a quarterback and his time and ability to throw the ball and to have the time for plays to develop and whatnot. Okay, so if you look at what's happened, we all know what's happened with the offensive line. Rookies, injuries, it's been a disaster. Carr is constantly under pressure, sacked 28 times so far this year. Okay,
brutal.
You add into that the psyche, right? I don't care if you're the best player who ever lived. I'm not saying he is, but I'm just saying if you are. Past injuries, a new system, no line, limited talent on offense, sans Jared Cook really, also plays into it. Now, if you look at Derek Carr, the numbers, here's the numbers. He's thrown a catchable ball. This is according to Pro Football Focus. He's thrown a catchable ball 79% of the time this season. It's good for third best in the NFL. The NFL average is 73%. He's throwing balls to people that are catchable, number one. Number two, he's averaged 6.2 yards per pass. Okay, that's a little low, no doubt about it. Breeze, for example, is at 7.4. Okay,
well,
now, Breeze to me is the
Breeze is in another stratosphere.
Yeah, and I think actually Breeze is the GOAT. But anyway,
yeah,
deep passes, very critical. People very critical of Derek Carr. 8.5% of his passes are deep. That's 44th. Andrew Luck is at 43rd, and Drew Brees is at 41st.
Right.
So I'm not saying that's a good number, but he's in pretty good company in that area.
Actually, Carr's on pace to break 4,000 yards this year for the first time in his career.
Yeah, but don't spoil people with facts because nobody wants to look at facts. They just want to look at him throwing the ball into the ground on fourth down.
The play blew up. I know he should have ran around and made something of it, but what can you do? And he's doing that behind a jumbled offensive line, and you got to respect that. The same thing you were talking about with Dak Prescott. The reason he looked so great his rookie year, they had a solid offensive line. Now, not so much. So, the game's always won in the trenches. That offensive and defensive line, that's where your meat and potatoes come from. Those guys come through. Those guys, you're going to win a lot of ball games.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, and that's the thing, too, is you have to look at it. And again, I'm not saying Derek Carr doesn't have issues. I think to me, Derek Carr's issues, and again, I've never played quarterback in my life. So just as a caveat, so if David Carr and Darren Carr, his brothers, who are good guys, get mad at me for saying this, I think it's psychological. I think coming off the injury, coming off 4 playbooks in 5 years.
That's right.
Okay. Now imagine you do your job. Let's say you're an electrician or you're a plumber or you're a card dealer here in Las Vegas, okay, and you're dealing cards down at the Bellagio, wherever you are. And every year they change the rules on you and say, no, you have to learn to do your job this way, differently.
Right.
Okay? It's not easy. It's just not easy. So I'm not saying that Derek Carr doesn't own his mistakes when he throws interceptions and bad looks. Not saying that at all. What I am saying, though, is I don't think you have enough data at this time in this new system with the lack of stability until next year. And by the way, financially, you still have one more year before you have to kind of make a tough choice if you want to let him go.
Right. No, you're 100% correct. You can't have that many offensive coordinators in such a short period of time and expect guys to just get into a rhythm,
Yeah, no, and to me, that's the thing. And I think that if you look at what's happening with Derek Carr, again, and even John Gruden's been critical of him and said, look, he's got to make better decisions at this time. But I think there's a lot of factors there. I just think that a lot of people, I remember teams where it's like, oh, that quarterback stinks, bring in the backup. And the backup comes in, has a good half a game. Oh, we got the new quarterback.
Right.
And then the next game they throw 4 picks, and you're like, okay, there's a reason why he's a backup.
That's right.
Okay, and not everybody's the backup like Brett Favre, who was just waiting to mature and become a great quarterback. Right. That sort of model in the NFL now, I think, is gone. And, of course, now some people point to the Eagles last year, right?
There's your Nick Foles situation right there.
Right, but again, that was an outlier as Xander
No,
wants.
Because here's Tom Brady. Bledsoe goes down. He comes off the bench. And, a legend is born. I feel like it's a lot easier for these guys to come off the bench. And then the next week when the team has a week to prepare for this new guy, they crush him.
Yeah, no, that's very true. And I just think, though, that when you look at Carr, you have to say to yourself, is it going to be better if we move to something else? Now, I'm not saying – I don't think that precludes the Raiders from going out this year with the multitude of draft picks they have. If they really like another quarterback – and they think this could be a guy who could sit behind Carr for a year or two and they like them.
That can easily happen.
Yeah, I think so. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No,
I think
no.
competition is always good.
Hey, the one thing we were always doing when you're evaluating talent, you're evaluating your own team. If you see something better than what you have and it's attainable, you go get it.
Yeah. Well, and that's the cold hard business, right? Fans. I saw a thread this year of Raider fans who were angry because they had just bought an Khalil Mack jersey. Right?
Yep.
It's like, I mean, you should pay me back. Look, I get that, right? We've all been there. But at the same time, look, it's a business, right? Chaz, you know this because you worked in it. It's a business. And when it's a business, you have to be looking out for, you have to play chess. You have to look at the next 5 moves. You might be building a team for this year, but you're also building a team for 3 years and 5 years. And that's going to be just as important as what happened.
You're absolutely right. You're winning a championship. It doesn't matter. You're already looking ahead. You're looking at the next moves. What can we do to be better? We won the championship in 2009, and it's like, keep this team together, right? No, you need to add pieces. So instead of, we brought in Ron Artest, Meta World Peace. Instead of keeping intact, you add
What
pieces.
did you call me?
Well,
Meta. Okay.
You're always looking to get better. You're always looking to have that edge. And like you said, you're always looking 3-4 moves down the road because you want to keep it going.
No, and it's a valued discussion. I think people are going to disagree, and I'm okay with people disagreeing. I don't have a problem. We're having a great back and forth with Xander on Facebook about trades and picks in the 20s, and I brought up the fact that Aaron Rodgers was picked 24th. And he said that's an outlier. But actually, if you look at the NFL draft, picks between 15 and 25, there's been amazing picks between 15 and 25. So again, you have to wait and see. I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm not saying he's going to be proven wrong because he could be proven right. We could get a team that drafts in the 20s that has a terrible pick. But you can also get a pick that's really good. I mean, Tom Brady went in the 6th round, right?
Right.
So there's all sorts of examples in all sports of guys that fly right under the radar who are not in the top 10 picks, but in the next tier and do amazing things.
I don't want to make anybody cringe, but the name DeMarcus Russell, does that mean anything to the Raider Nation?
Yeah,
You know?
I think that you have to always look at what happens. Now, if they go out with if the Bears pick in the 20s, which if they continue on the track they are, that's where they'll be, unless something falls out. You never know what's going to happen. But if the pick's in the 20s, and the player is not a good player or it's not somebody who pans out, then you can say, it was a bad trade, but you can't evaluate it. It's just like getting married. If you get married, I make you nervous there? Hey, dude, I'm going on 23 years, brother.
Congratulations.
I got lucky. Yeah, I got lucky.
That's awesome.
But here's the thing, though. You get married. Nobody goes into the marriage and says, oh, this is going to suck. We're going to be divorced in 2 years. No, you go in, and then after a while time, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out.
Yep.
But you can't say up front that it's going to work or it's not going to work because you don't know. And so I think that's the same thing with draft picks. And we'll have to see how that all goes down.
No, it's not an exact science.
No,
absolutely right.
No, but fans want it to be, and I understand why. Excuse me while I cough. I can understand why, but at the same time, I think you just got to play it out. If you don't think Gruden's going to be able to do it, that's fair. Okay. It's going to drive you crazy. I think it's a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy because you're just going to be miserable because you're going to think he's not going to be able to do it. So everything he does, you're not going to like.
You got to stay positive. At the end of the day, it's always about staying positive. Look what you can do right. Look at the things that are going right, and and focus on those things.
Well, and hopefully, some people would say it wouldn't be going right, but the Raiders have a chance to win today. It's another game. It's another week. They have the opportunity to play down in Glendale against the Arizona Cardinals today. And when we come back from this break, I know I love Sundays too. They suck when football's not in season. But when we come back, we're going to talk to Darren Urban. Darren is the senior writer for azcardinals.com. And we talked to Darren about a lot of different things. We're going to talk to him about the matchup with the Raiders, about the Cardinals and their own retooling, including UCLA rookie quarterback Josh Rosen and the talented running back David Johnson, and other things. So make sure you stick with us after the break. Darren will join us. We'll talk Cardinals versus Raiders here on Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m. 11:40 a.m. in Las Vegas. We go out now on the attorney Michael Troiano newsmaker line down to Phoenix, and we bring in Darren Urban. Darren's the senior writer at ArizonaCardinals.com. Darren, thanks for joining us here on the Silver and Black today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so some parallels today as we go into the game as the Cardinals host the Raiders. The Cardinals 2-7. Of course, the Raiders only have one win. The Cardinals coming off, Darren, a respectable performance against the Chiefs. They lost 26-14. They were down only 6 with about 12 minutes left to play before Josh Rosen had that late interception. But he was in a position to take his team down and perhaps tie or go ahead in the game. How are the things, how is it progressing, I should say, with Rosen at the helm as quarterback as this team retools its roster heading into the future?
Well, clearly, as a rookie, he's in a position right now, Josh Rosen, that, there are going to be ups and downs. And while they were in a good spot there in Kansas City in terms of potentially going down and scoring, and to be honest, I thought they had a good chance of doing it. The play before the big interception, he had just thrown a 23-yard pass to running back David Johnson to kind of get them into good position at their own 40-yard line. So it was a good start to the drive, even though they were in a hostile place. So I think Josh Rosen's done a lot of good things. He's done some not so great things. The interception itself was, he just didn't get the screen pass up and over the defensive player, Justin Houston, and those things are going to happen. And the interception total has gone up the last couple games. He only had one in his first 3 appearances, which was 2 starts and a relief appearance. And now he had 6 interceptions the last 3 games. So he needs to clean that up a little bit. But I think in terms of his progression as a leader, as a guy getting more comfortable in the offense, more comfortable with new offensive coordinator Byron Leftwich, I think it's going in the direction everybody wants it to go around here.
Yeah, no, and there's no doubt, clearly, the Cardinals, as I said, retooling that roster due to age and other reasons. And you start with Rosen in the draft, which I thought was actually the best place he possibly could have gone, being a kid from the West Coast and what was happening down there in Phoenix. But the team with the record, obviously, at the bottom of the league with the Raiders. But what's the feeling overall on where the team is on the timeline that they've set out to build this into a championship contender once again?
Well, they came into the season, hoping that it was going to be more of a bridge year rather than any kind of retooling. They did have a new coach, but, again, they were 8-8 last year, and they were hoping that there could be kind of a seamless transition, which is why they originally signed Sam Bradford to be their starter, even though and kept them in that spot, even though they drafted Josh Rosen. They were hoping that they could go and maybe make a push for the playoffs in the first year with Steve Wilks as coach, and if not, just move in the right direction. And then by next year, you could drop Josh Rosen in there, hopefully have be able to go off with your quarterback of the future and still have been competitive the whole time. I don't think they necessarily saw a big drop off coming or having to retool, and now they're in the process of seeing some of the holes that are definitely there that they are going to need to address going into next season. So I think that's all being kind of evaluated at this point. I mean, again, you have your quarterback of the future. That's a good thing. You have David Johnson, one of the best running backs in the league, and they're finally getting around to getting him the ball a little bit more, so that helps. Their defense has been kind of up and down. There's been some bad moments, but if you look at some of the metrics that are out there, the Cardinals defense hasn't been all that terrible. They have shown some things, so that's a good sign, even though Steve Wilks doesn't have all the personnel he wants to run the defense that he's running. So it's, again, a work in progress. I think the offseason and between free agency and the draft is going to mean a lot to this team in terms of rebuilding the offensive line, in terms of getting some of those pieces in place, whether it's more linebackers or defensive tackles or wide receivers, which they need. So this offseason is going to be a big one. There's no question about it. But when you're rebuilding a team, getting a long-term answer at quarterback, which they think they have, is the most important first step. And so that's a good place to start.
Again, we're talking to Darren Urban from azcardinals.com. And Darren, you mentioned the offensive line, and obviously having a young quarterback that's as talented as Josh Rosen and wanting him to develop into the franchise quarterback that I know that he can be. The offensive line, I mean, you had Justin Pugh's knee injury, right? You're not sure how long-term that's going to be. John Wetzel had the season-ending neck injury. And so that's hurt that unit. I mean, for a quarterback to develop, and we've seen it with the Raiders too, right, on our end, which is when that offensive line, when it's either young or it's injured and you have guys stepping in or playing out of place, that makes it even more difficult for that young quarterback to really be able to sit back there and learn and progress as much as they'd like.
The offensive line has been the big issue all week coming into this game in terms of where it was. They struggled in protection in Kansas City, especially late in the game when the Chiefs knew the Cardinals had to throw, which is going to happen with any team that's going to be stuck in a position where they have to throw. Justin Pugh, actually, the knee injury is season ending, so he's done for the year. They have had some shuffling. At this point, DJ Humphries is questionable going into this game with a knee problem. And the bottom line is the guys that they picked for starters, even when they were all in there, didn't play quite the way that they were hoping they were going to be able to play, especially running the ball. Now, they did flash better as a run-blocking unit in Kansas City, and that's what this team has to do. This team has to be balanced. It can't be in a position where they're throwing all the time. One, because Rosen is inexperienced and he's still learning the game. Two, because their wide receiver core is not super strong right now. It was once the strength of this team a couple years ago, and it's not in that place right now. And because this line is better at run blocking than pass blocking, and you don't want to get your quarterback beaten up. So, yeah, the line is an important thing now in terms of how they manage it the rest of this season. And going into the offseason, I think it's going to be, if not the number one priority, it's going to be one of the top couple.
Yeah, and if you look at the runs the Cardinals made in the Super Bowl runs, they had really great offensive, defensive lines. Now, against the Raiders, the Cardinals this week, later today, they have a team in the Raiders, one of the worst, if not the worst defensive unit in the leagues. Do you get the sense that the coaching staff and the Cardinals are looking at this game as an opportunity to really get back on track and maybe get back into that win column?
If they are, they weren't saying it at all in the week leading up to it. In fact, they've been very careful. Everybody, having a home game against the Raiders, it might be the only time all year the Cardinals will be favored in a game. The opportunity is there to ask those questions of, hey, what do you think can happen? And they've all been very careful about, talking about not so much the straight out cliche of which we've heard those too, of, you still have to play it and every team's a professional and all that stuff. But there seems to be more of a understanding that, at 2-7, the Cardinals aren't a team that are going to be able to go around and strut themselves and say, we're playing a bad team here and we should be able to take care of business. Now, does that get in people, players' heads? Maybe sometimes they know what the Raiders have been through this year, and they know, who's coming to town, and players talk anyways,
sure,
around the league. So, but in terms of outwardly, no, I think they're being very cautious in terms of how they're approaching this because, again, they know how much they've struggled on so many levels, especially at home. The last time they played at home, they got their first home win of the year in 5 games.
Yeah.
And they did have a couple of close games at home, but for the most part, you're supposed to take care of business at home, and they have not. So they know that they need to stay focused no matter who the opponent is.
All right, well, Darren, with the couple minutes we have left here, I think you mentioned earlier on how the Cardinals defense playing pretty good. I mean, it has its spots, of course, but it's coming off a 5-sack performance in Kansas City. They had 10 total tackles for a loss. So this defense seems to be gelling at times. And do you think that's, to me, that's going to be the key for them today against the Raiders, with the Raiders' offensive woes and the Raiders being incredibly thin, especially at the wide receiver position. Talk about that defense and its ability to perhaps really put them in the position to win this game today.
Well, I do think that if there is a place where the Cardinals have a big, big advantage, it's, their pass rush, which has been good even when they're playing poorly. Their pass rush has been good all year. And you're going up against a struggling Raiders offensive line and a Raiders offense that doesn't have a lot of playmakers. And the defense is seemingly starting to understand a little bit better what these coaches are expecting of it. So I do think there is a big advantage there for the Cardinals to get to Derek Carr and to cause some havoc. We saw it last week, even though the Chiefs scored 26 points. That was 10 below their average, more than 10 below the Chiefs' average. And you said, they sacked Mahomes 5 times and just looked really good doing it. So I do think that's somewhere behind Chandler Jones rushing the passer that this defense can get some things done.
Yeah, no, Jones is a stud, and I think, you look at the Cardinals last week, 5 sacks. The Raiders as a team have 8 for the entire year. So they're struggling on both sides of the ball, but it should be a good game later today down in Phoenix. We've been talking to Darren Urban from azcardinals.com. Darren, thank you, man, so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right, you're listening to Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio 1140 AM. We'll be back right after we pay some bills here on a football Sunday.
The law office of Michael A. Troiano is a proud supporter of all things Las Vegas, including its people, specializing in legal representation for all criminal defense matters ranging from misdemeanors to the most serious felonies. Attorney Michael Troiano provides clients with the legal strategy and professional representation needed in court. If you or a loved one find yourself in a legal situation and need a tough defense on your side, Michael Troiano can help. Call now for a free consultation, 702-843-5500, or learn more at TroianoVegasLaw.com.
A union we can count on. A union with a legacy known for hard work and getting things done. We're the ones who built this city with pride. Our members are our family, and their well-being is our #1 priority. Laborers Union Local 872. Vegas strong, union proud.
The Army National Guard is committed to keeping the country safe and our communities secure. Composed of hundreds of thousands of citizen soldiers from all walks of life and in every corner of America, the Guard is always ready to respond to local or national emergencies. The Army National Guard reacts to domestic operations.
This portion of Silver and Black Today is powered by the law office of Michael Troiano. Help us talk the Silver and Black. Call us at 702-889-5978. Here's Matt Gutierrez and your host, Scott Gulbranson, on CBS Sports Radio 1140 AM.
Welcome back. Silver and Black Today on this Sunday, this football Sunday. And again, Matt Gutierrez is on vacation. He'll be back next week. I'm joined in studio by my co-host, Chaz Osborne. And joining us now on the Michael Troiano Newsmaker line is one of our favorite guys, of course. That is Tommy White. He's the Secretary-Treasurer and Business Manager of the Laborers Local 872. Happy Sunday, Tommy. How you doing today, buddy?
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Doing great.
Thanks.
So we want to talk to you about, and we had a story on the website about this where I talked to you earlier in the week about this assertion that the stadium was having trouble with finding laborers, particularly those that are iron workers. And, of course, that is not true. Tommy, clear it up for everybody. Let them know what's going on at the stadium site when it comes to iron workers.
So, iron workers, they're a one-of-a-kind breed, right? So, I mean, they built all the tall skyscrapers. They built the stadiums. And, we have some of the best here in town. So when you start hearing rumors like that, you start to think, where are these rumors coming from, right? So I can tell you right now, we have the best iron workers out there in the stadium. We have the best of all the crafts out there. That's why the stadium's coming together so good.
Yeah, and that's the point, right? Is I don't know where the rumors come from. I think some of them come from that contingent up in the Bay Area that continues to deride Las Vegas. I get why they're upset that their team's leaving, but they will do anything to sort of try to throw wrenches into the operation. But the workforce that's on at the stadium now, Tommy, Chaz and I were talking about it earlier on the show. You're seeing that steel structure of the stadium. You're starting to see the stadium take shape on the exterior and what's happening there. Give us an update on where we are with that, because it looks like, every day I drive by, it looks like they're putting up steel at a record pace.
Yeah, like I said before, by the end of this year, we got, another month and a couple of weeks maybe, you're going to see probably the full form of that stadium around there. The best way to look at the stadium is from the south side looking in, right? So before you drive by, you see a lot of concrete being placed. You see a lot of rebar out there. What you're seeing right now is the structure, right? So, that's what we call the curtain wall. So that's where when you see that silhouette of the stadium, that's what you're going to start seeing over the next month. The ironwork is going at a fantastic pace. You're going to start seeing sometime in April, they're going to bring these giant cranes out there to start running that cable system. We're right on track. We're probably better on track than I would say most of the stadiums that I've seen built.
Wow, that's great. No, and it certainly looks like it. And we've talked about this numerous times having you on, Tommy, and that is nobody builds big like Las Vegas builds big, right? So we've built these projects. We continue to do them. You have folks working on Resorts World, working on all kinds of projects, including coming up the Hard Rock. There's also the remodel of the Stratosphere, which you were involved with the original building of the Stratosphere and the tower. Talk about how all of those projects, because that's been another kind of whisper campaign amongst these kind of folks that are negative about the project, has been, well, boy, with all of these projects, they're not going to have enough people. That's not true either, is it?
No, it's especially with the stadium again. Everybody looks at the stadium now as their part of their legacy, right? So you have a lot of workers out there, both men and women. They're going to be on that stadium all the way until the end. With the Stratosphere, you have multiple remodels going on the Strip, and really what it has done, it has brought our workforce back. When I started hearing about these Winnebagos and campers and when you have big jobs like that, you got to remember a lot of our workers they moved out of town, and when there was no work here. So I couldn't blame a guy that if he was working in Oregon or working in California and he was living in a Winnebago, that he brought his Winnebago back here. I mean, people are starting to buy houses again. I mean, I see my own members out there, out buying houses again. So, the workforce is back. We have never, ever, and I've heard this for the past 20 years about a shortage of workers. We have never, ever had a shortage of union construction hands in Las Vegas, and that goes for all the unions.
Yeah, and that's a key point, because I think that's where some of the people are misinformed, that there's going to be trouble staying on schedule because of that, which isn't true. Now, the other things, too, I want to refute, since we have you, I want to refute other rumors, and some of these are just crazy, Tommy. Someone also is out there saying that the stadium is sinking, which is hysterical. You explained this to me the other night. I want you to tell people, first of all, that it's not sinking and why it's not sinking.
So I was involved with the issue that took place with Mandalay Bay. So,
right.
There is a water table under Las Vegas. Everybody knows it. Where Mandalay Bay sits, we built what was called the center core. Now, the center core in every hotel on the Strip, if you used to take an overhead view of the hotel, the center core is where all of your elevators are, right? That would be probably, if you had to go for the heaviest part of the building, that your center core would be the heaviest part of the building. Now, on hotels, they branch out. If you, go from an overhead shot, either they look like a Y or they look like an X. Mm-hmm. And that was a Steve Wynn design back in the day, and he really knew how to get as much as he can out of a piece of property. The stadium, on the other hand, the stadium doesn't have a center core, right? And I can tell you just from what we done out there drilling the caissons, we were going 40 feet down. Now, that's 40 feet down after we did our blasting. You would know when we were doing our blasting, you would know if there was going to be soft spots in the dirt. That's why we did core drilling. I mean, we went down as far as 150 feet on core drilling. So, it's just, that negativity again, nobody's going to put negativity on Las Vegas, right? I mean,
that's right.
We came through it. We built this city. The city's growing. It's growing fast. But again, the stadium don't have a center core. The stadium is basically built in a circle, right? So you lose all that heavy weight. Is there a lot of steel on a stadium? Yes. Is there more steel on a stadium than any of those casinos, those resorts we built? Probably not. Some of those resorts are, 50 stories, right? So, that stadium's not 50 stories of structural steel and concrete. So that stadium's not sinking. I don't know where they come up with this. I'm sure by next week we'll hear that they found, a woolly mammoth or something out there.
Well, that's the thing, with the environmental things. But that's all been done. So that's good news, Tommy.
Hey, Tommy, it's Chad Osborne here. I had a question for you.
Hey.
How does will the weather affect? Will that change your work, or how does that work with the weather?
The colder weather?
Yeah, you get. It's extremely hot here in the summer. It gets pretty cold in the winter. How does that change what you're doing out there?
Yeah, I don't. The weather never affected us here, right? So even when like you mentioned, pretty cold. It might be pretty cold at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, but once you get past 9, even if it's 50 degrees out, you're working outside. I can tell you that because I worked on a few of these projects. The heat that generates off of the concrete and the heat that generates off of the steel basically keeps the project warm, right? So, I mean, we're not in snow. We're not in freezing cold all day long. We're not in sleet. And the workers out here, they're just fantastic. They know how to dress for the day. You'd start out on a job at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning. You'll have 3-4 layers of stuff. By the time you get to 10 o'clock, you're down to your long sleeve shirts again, right? So, this weather's not going to affect us. If anything, we're going to go faster.
I know. Yeah, you don't have to sweat as much, and those guys and gals always have to be hydrated, but at least it's not the beating sun on them. So that's good. Well, Tommy, man, thank you so much. Tommy White, of course, from the Laborers Local 872 and also the Las Vegas Stadium Authority Board. We'll talk to you soon, buddy. Thanks for spending part of our Sunday with us.
Appreciate it, guys. Have a great Sunday.
Thank you so much. All right, that's Tommy White talking to us and refuting all of the ridiculous rumors about the stadium out there. Chaz, it's pretty funny, man. I mean, it's like haters are going to hate, right?
Where do they come up with these stories, man? I know, we're in the media. We want to dig. We want to make, we need clicks on our stories to make it look good. But
that's right.
And they come up with some crazy stuff.
They do. Again, want to thank Tommy Way for joining us. When we come back in our last segment, we're going to go out to Vinny Bonsignore, who just got out of Denver on an airplane back to Los Angeles. We'll talk to him about the Raiders' current situation and an update on the NFL. You're listening to the Silver and Black Today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m. in Las Vegas.
Hey, this is Rodney Hudson. You're listening to Silver and Black Today.
All right, we're back. Silver and Black Today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m. here in Las Vegas. And it's late, but better late than never. We're joined by Vinny Bonsignore of the Athletic Los Angeles, who I think you just touched back down in Los Angeles for the first time, in a week, Vinny?
Yeah, left on Tuesday for Colorado Springs. I'm back in Los Angeles. I'm actually on my shuttle bus back to my parking, so bear with me here, the trials and tribulations of traveling.
Well, yeah, that's okay. If we have crying children or something like that, that's okay. But the first thing I want to talk to you about is for us to give you guys, our thoughts out there, because you've been through in your community in Los Angeles and of course in the Northern California area as well, just through a terrible few weeks with the fires and of course the terrible violence in Thousand Oaks as well with the shooting. How's everybody keeping it together? I know you've been away, but your family's back there. How's the community doing with everything that's been happening?
Everyone's kind of banding together and getting through this. And I know for the Rams' perspective, there were about 100 players, coaches, and staff members who were displaced, had to evacuate their homes because of the fires. It started in Thousand Oaks or in that area, and a lot of players live in and around that area all the way to Malibu. So it was a bad situation. And going away this week actually kind of helped them because Stan Kroenke, ordered another charter flight for family members to come with them to Colorado Springs. A lot of them took advantage of it. And so it was a good chance for the players, the team, and their families to kind of get away from the madness that's been going on over here.
Yeah, that's certainly tough. And again, our thoughts are with all you guys down there, and hopefully things start to turn and everybody's good. And of course, the football game tomorrow will be a nice maybe distraction for everybody with such a big profile game. Of course, it had to be moved from Mexico, which is insane because of how bad the field was. It was the right call, even though some people were saying, "Oh, why can't you do it down there?" And it became a player safety issue, which I know you talked a lot about, Vinny. But talk about getting the Rams getting that game back there. And this whole international thing, I've never been a fan. I understood it from a business perspective, but I've never been a fan of the NFL playing all these games and having these teams go out of town. Do you think is this going to open up a dialogue of maybe things changing a little bit, or is this train already on the track and nothing's derailing it?
Yeah, it's already on the tracks, and I understand, from our perspective, even the players' perspective. But I think when you sit down and talk to players and say, well, you get 48, 49% of the revenue, and this increases the revenue when you go overseas and broaden your brand and sell more jerseys and sell more tickets and everything else overseas, it opens up more revenue for the league, which means more money for you. When you put it into that perspective, let's go to London, let's go to Mexico City to play. But we'll see what happens with Mexico City. They didn't handle their business this past game. They had one job to do. They didn't do it. They didn't have a field ready. They had a year to prepare for it. They didn't do it. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see if Mexico City gets the game moving forward.
Hey, Vinny, Chaz here. I was wondering, were you upset that you didn't get to go to Mexico City, or are you
I've never been there. I'm just going to say no comment on that one.
I went one time, and they told me I had a good time. I don't remember.
That was what I was afraid of.
Oh, boy.
I was afraid of the not remembering part.
Yeah, the tequila flows a little too easily.
Yeah.
But Vinny, so let's talk about the Raiders a little bit here in the brief time we have with you. And that is one of the things, Chaz, we've been talking a lot today about the rebuild, and I know we've asked you about that in the past. It kind of is what it is. We know where it's going. Mm-hmm. But from a locker room, you're in a locker room, an NFL locker room all the time. You've been around teams as they prepare to move, as they've won, as they've lost. When you're in a situation where you're 1-8, we start to hear of discord, quote unquote discord in the locker room and that kind of stuff. How real is that, and how much of it is truth versus maybe those of us in the media, including us, maybe playing it up a little bit? I mean, how bad does it get when a team is going like the Raiders are going?
It could get really bad. And first and foremost, if anyone's happy with it, then they probably don't belong in the NFL or with that team. So there's going to be disappointment. There's going to be frustration. There's going to be anger, that they're not getting the job done. But it can't get to a point where fingers are getting pointed and people are bad-mouthing other players and each other and all that sort of thing, because that's when character gets revealed. And a lot of these guys they're not just auditioning for the Raiders moving forward; they're auditioning for other teams moving forward. and the way they handle their business is going to be scrutinized. And a lot of these guys are playing for jobs. Let's face it. And they're not doing a very good job of it right now, but hopefully they get it together. And it is a rebuild, and I think people just need to understand that. And it's going to get ugly. It is ugly, but better days are ahead for the Raiders. We've talked about how they're going to control the next 2 drafts with the 5 first-round picks that they have and multiple picks in following rounds. So there is excitement right around the corner, and it's going to start as soon as this season is over when people start talking about the scouting combine and what they're going to do at the top of the draft and how they're going to handle it and how they're going to manipulate it. And I think that will create some excitement and some momentum. And that's really the start of this rebuild, when they can start tapping into some of these assets that they've accumulated and how they do that and how they manage it. It's going to go a long way to deciding whether this is going to be a long rebuild or something that they could get turned around sooner rather than
faster. Yeah. So let me again, we're talking to Vinny Bonsignore from the Athletic Los Angeles. Vinny, let me ask you this, and this is a little more of an inside baseball for listeners out there who aren't journalists, and we got about a minute left. When you're covering a team like that and they're in a situation like that and stuff starts happening in the locker room, where do you draw the line on what you report and what you don't? Is it really just a personal choice for you, or do you feel like there's certain things you just don't talk about versus certain things you would?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, guys need to understand when they're on the record. And,
they're on the record.
Or when they're sharing something with you off the record. But there is things that you hear sometimes, when it's really not reportable stuff. It's just stuff. It's life stuff. It's something that somebody might say in the locker room to another player. And if it wasn't directly said to you, or there wasn't an understanding like, hey, I'm giving you this off the record, or I'm actually going to put my name to it, then you don't report that. That's just not professional. And so, I haven't been I'm thinking about some of the worst teams that I've covered. The Rams were pretty bad when they first got here, but that was such a young team, and I don't think anyone was really necessarily pointing fingers. I think we all understood, and even in retrospect, that it was a coaching issue more than anything else, and they got that cleaned up, and look at where they are now.
But
I remember
the ghost of Jeff Fisher.
Yeah, I remember some bad Dodger teams where it was toxic in the locker room. There were some bad apples, and you can feel it and you can sense it, and they needed to clean that up.
All right. Well, Vinny, listen, we're out of time today. We'll get you back on track in that first segment next week. Please take care down there and let everybody know we're thinking of them.
Thanks, Vinny.
All right. Absolutely. Thank you very much. And happy Thanksgiving, guys.
Thanks. Same to you, Vinny. I appreciate that. Vinny Bonsignore from the Athletic Los Angeles here in the waning moments of Silver and Black today. Chaz, man, thanks for coming in. I know we'll see you again.
It's an honor and a privilege, man.
All
I
right,
appreciate you.
Well, we are going to check out now. Don't forget, catch us on the PG 4 to 6 p.m. Raider postgame and NFL overall. We'll be back here next week. You can check out the website, silverandblacktoday.com, where you can get on-demand versions of this show as well as the podcast. Look for the podcast. Chaz will be on the podcast next time. All right, for Chaz, this is Scott Branson. Silver and Black Today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m. We'll talk to you next time. Thanks, guys.